Hello, welcome back everyone. This is the first meeting after the summit. So there are two items on the agenda. Let's start with the easier one first, because I imagine the summit one will take more time. Giovanni, do you want to make the announcement?
Yeah, thank you. So essentially, the raster API are published on crates.io. So they are there to be used by the people and getting feedback on that. On the next meeting, so in 2 weeks, I will go through a walkthrough of the API. So just to give the people an understanding of what we did and how to use the API at its best. That's it.
All right, thanks, Giovanni. We also have like a quick start, the template to like copy paste for people. Right. We don't have a lot of people on the call, so I'm not sure there's much to discuss in terms of status of various work streams. So let's go to the summit conclusions. Anyone who wants to share how that went?
I can go because I have to drop in a couple minutes. So in terms of the summit as a whole, it was the largest attendance of OCP to date. There were 7,000 or more people, which is mind-blowing. Last year in comparison was the largest one ever, and it was 4,000 people. So it was very, very significant. Very high energy on the floor, a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion. Obviously, AI is driving a lot of those collaborations and discussions and networking, liquid cooling, and other forms of cooling remain the theme this year. On the diagnostic side, there were a number of talks in the test and validation that were scheduled the second day, which was very exciting. There were a lot of interest after the talk, a lot of enthusiasm around resonating with the mission that we're standing by. So that was very net positive. In terms of the talk that we gave, Arun and Rahul and myself tried our best to represent the work we do in this work stream. And I kind of want to bring it back. We did a bit of a refresher on what problem we're trying to solve, which essentially is accelerating diagnostic development and collaborating more efficiently. And we outlined sort of where we are on the diagnostics from a vision of the compute, the storage, the accelerator, the interconnects, and the networking. And we showed that we have diagnostics in each of these categories, minus the networking, and that the vision underlying this strategic initiative is to build an OCP compliant product, so that if we have diagnostics woven across these different components, we can have a manufacturer or an ODM that's assembling a product, just build it, cherry picking the diags that are relevant to the components, and ship the product to the customer. So that really resonated with the group and audience, that I think sets the tone for a number of the other work streams we had talked about over the years, such as the community lab and the sort of that test plan driven OCP diagnostic. So in a nutshell, very positive. We did a call to action to get people onboarded. So looking forward, hopefully we'll have more people call into the meeting. We do have an action item to revamp our wiki, because right now it's a little outdated. I think we should take that up and be clear around the different breakdown of how people can get in touch. So that was my view. I don't know, Arun, Karen, since you were there, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I second the points you made about the size doubling literally. It was very exciting to see all the activity on the on the show floor. We had genuine traffic to even, places like the Innovation Village. So it was really, really nice to see that. So yeah, I basically second what Vincent said.
What I took away from it as well is that there's knowing what to do with what's delivered is important as well. We can give all the technical solutions, but understanding how it can help other people in the community and our partners, and what's the best approach going forward. That's a gap I saw from the chats during OCP.
Okay, thanks, Aaron and Karen. Vincent had to drop. So my question is there any action item or anything that we can do right now as a group, as a learning from the summit? I've kind of, I've heard like a bit of more of a generic statement, aside from what Vincent said earlier about the wiki.
One thing I'd say is there are certain people that probably don't care about the technical details of how we're implementing tests and the tactical stuff. But they may be useful to help roll it out. So having a separate meeting, or maybe just dedicating one of these a month or something to say we're looking at how we can roll it out rather than what we're implementing, might be useful. And whether it's an OCP meeting or whether it's something else, I think there's a benefit to it.
All right, okay, so you're proposing that we have another meeting other than this one, or maybe we can put it on the agenda for this one, but could you be a bit more specific about the goal of that meeting?
So there's certain people that can help us understand how it can benefit the company. So let's say we were looking for having adoption. So if someone has a DIAG and they want adoption, how do we approach having adoption across the community rather than what it is we're trying to adopt? So having those, there's a different set of people that answer both of those questions. And the people that answer how we gain adoption and what we're adopting aren't the same audience. And some of them don't have as much time to be coming to every meeting, but if we've specific meetings where they can provide their input, which is shorter than these ones, I think it would be good.
All right, so based on that, I think we could still use this time slot. The reason why I'm saying this is because this is an expensive meeting, and the more people we have on it, the more expensive it gets, and adding another one has the same issue. So I think we could add that kind of item on the agenda for the first meeting of the month, for example, if it's once a month. And we could manually invite other people to that specific call. What do you say?
Yeah, and let's say it's time boxed, so it finishes at past. They don't even have to reserve an hour. We just say the first meeting of every month, the first 30 minutes relates to a particular area. And if you can't come any other time and that's your interest, please join this meeting.
Okay. I think that sounds okay. If anyone else has opinions, feel free to raise your hand. Do you wanna take an action item, Karen, to write this idea down and maybe figure out some people that we would invite in those calls?
Yeah, that I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Now, any other impressions from the summit last week that anyone wants to share?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't in the summit, but one of my colleagues was there, and he brought out this presentation that Vincent and others Arun did on the OCP, and that's what triggered some of the discussion internally on how we get engaged more. So I think yeah, it was a good pitch. The very positive feedback on what was presented, and I think we need to capitalize on this and get more traction so that we can kick off the next steps while the interest is there.
Excellent. Thanks for that feedback in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do exactly that in the following meetings and discussions. Okay, so we don't have any other items on the agenda. I do see a couple of new names on the call. So I am gonna ask, we usually do this. So I see Rupesh and Nati. I don't know if you've joined this call before. We usually ask new people to do like a quick self-intro and what you expect to get from this call. So if you're okay with that, maybe Rupesh, you can start.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just stumbled upon OCP Summit YouTube videos and was just exploring the projects, thought of looking at this calendar and joining. My background is in AWS Cloud, and I also work with GPUs a bit. And I have used testing of GPUs. So I thought let me see what's in development here and how I can first understand what's going on and see in future to contribute.
Great. Nice to have you, Rupesh.
Thank you.
Nati, you wanna do a quick self-intro, please?
It's my turn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I work for Western Digital. I'm actually the same group as Inder, which you see on the call, and I join every time I can. And my intention is to gather information about the OCP validation, the different approach to testing, a new feature that we can test and verify, and to get aware, honestly, of anything new. I joined in the past few times, and then you're listening.
Got it. Thank you, Nati. Great to have both of you here, and welcome. Now, since there's nothing else on the agenda, does anyone want to raise any other topics for today? Okay.
Yeah, I was just sorry, I was just wondering about the diagnostic APIs that we want to use for, let's say, SSDs. If we want to get information on those APIs, how we can get that, or where is that information?
So when you're saying the word API here, could you explain a bit more what your interpretation is of this?
So I just heard that we have got diagnostic framework where for the vendors, right? And then you have the framework APIs for the integrators. And I'm presuming that integrators are going to be leveraging the APIs that are in the vendors, that are used by the vendors, but more to check the overall system, not each component. And maybe it's a trimmed down version of the vendor APIs. I'm just thinking out loud, right? I don't have the details behind this. So
Right.
my question is, we talked about different components and vendors for those components, like the NIC, the STD, the SSD, the memory, and all that, the CPU, the GPU. So from WD perspective, we are in the SSD domain, SSD domain. Is there a way to find out what those APIs are that this forum is publicizing for SSDs and HDDs that we can start to look at and see how we can support those APIs in our internal framework, or how we can provide those APIs and and pass those APIs.
Right. So that's it's a great question. I think I can clarify what this API term means when it's used in this call.
Okay.
So a bit of context. This group has produced a specification in 2022, which is called the OCP TV test and validation output specification. And this is basically a list of, well, it is a way of describing the output of a diagnostic package in terms of its execution. So what is a diagnostic package? This is kind of an umbrella term. It can be anything that produces a kind of signal for the thing that you're trying to test. So this could be benchmarking, performance, compliance, anything else. The spec has a bunch of messages in it. I'm gonna post a link on the chat here, which try to capture the details of this execution of a diagnostic. So it's basically standardizing the output of a diagnostic, which obviously has a benefit of being able to use this diagnostic in variable environments, as opposed to what usually happens where a testing team develops their own thing and their own output and their own format for logging that execution. Now, APIs, when we talk about APIs here, there are currently 3 APIs. One is they are per language. One is in C++, one is Rust, which Giovanni just mentioned that we launched, and one is in Python. These APIs are a strongly typed way or a programmatic way of outputting messages which are compliant to the specification that I mentioned a minute ago. So the API doesn't do anything by itself. It doesn't set up an environment. It doesn't test anything. It's just a way to output this kind of to produce this kind of standard output. And these APIs are meant to be used in diagnostic packages that testing teams write. So let me give an example. I'll post the link for the Python one. Where is Python? Okay, there we go. So this last link on the chat here is the repo which contains the Python API. This is currently used in a couple of diags already. If you go to this repo and you look in the examples folder, you'll see like a bunch of examples of how to use the API, right? There's also this quick start repo, which has been launched recently, which will contain, for various languages that we support, some template starters for diagnostics. Now, this is on the side of the spec and APIs to produce spec compliant output. We also have, as part of this group, and that we maintain, a couple of diagnostics which are non-differentiating. And they use these production APIs to output spec. So, for example, there's one for CPU, which is OCP diag set, if I can find it. Which is, here's the link on the chat here, which is basically a diagnostic around the SAT stress up test to look at the CPU and provide signal about performance and what the other stuff SAT does. So this is an example of a diagnostic, right? But diagnostics can be anything. In this case, this is more of a benchmark performance type diagnostic. I'm giving it here as an example.
Okay.
Does that answer your question at this point? Like, are things more clear?
Well, I'll take a look at the links. Thank you, Adrian. The SSD diagnostic APIs, I guess they are testing probably the performance and compliance and things like that. Do we have anybody who has adopted that yet? Any vendor who's adopted those APIs that you know of?
So this last link that I posted on the chat here, which is called OCP Diag Autoval SSD, this is a diag that is published by Meta, people from Meta, but this is meant, to my understanding, this is meant as an intersection point between Meta and vendors. Now, I don't have all of the details myself right now. Maybe Karen, you can help me here, because the people involved in this, Venkat and Vineet Parekh, are not on the call today. But if we were to talk about SSD diags, this would probably be the place to place new code or to use this for the tests that it has inside already.
Okay.
There's an open Slack chat. Adrian, you might have or a GitHub chat on this SSD diag. So if you add your question there, we can we can ensure that the people involved in Meta respond to it in there so that you have a direct line. And if there are any questions that you don't find answered, we can definitely follow up on them as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah, if you go on the last link in that, diag Autoval SSD, on the discussions tab, you can start a discussion there, and if you have questions.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll ensure there's people keeping an eye out for it as well.
Okay, cool. I hope that clears things up a bit, and I hope it was useful to Rupesh as well, and Nati as new people on the call.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Rupesh. Anything else we want to discuss today?
I had something really quick. I was reading through the OCP diag, the spec, and I can put a link here in the chat to the specific section I was looking at. It's the Objective 2 structured output section, where basically the TLDR is, you know, many of these diags are wrappers around things like FIO or NetPerf, etc. And then what happens in these diags is you spend a lot of time and a lot of brittle, or write a lot of brittle code to parse the output of those tools and present data in some structured way. When I was reading through that, I realized like this particular spec's not necessarily meant to solve that problem. Just provide a structured way to output that data from whatever wrapping code exists. Does that sound right, or am I kind of missing the point there?
That is correct. So in an ideal world, we would have diagnostic tools where the definition of what diagnostic means varies a lot. But these tools would produce structured output by default, by themselves, or would be able to produce this kind of structured output. So what that section says is you usually find testing teams try to wrap around things that do not produce structured output. And parsing that unstructured output, which is generally meant for humans and not for computer consumption, is flaky, right? So that's why it's ideal to produce the structured output from the beginning so that you can reason about it in an executor layer, for example, when you run the diagnostic. Now, there is no enforcement in any of this in saying you need to produce this from the beginning. There's a couple of diags which still do the wrapping thing. So for example, if you look at the memtester diag that we have, due to legal and other limitations in the memtester diag, the way that runs is it will actually run memtest 86 and try to parse its unstructured output and provide an OCP TV output based on what memtest 86 said. Right, so there's cases where we have to do this, but ideally we want to include this kind of output in the diagnostic tool itself from the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. That particular wrapping problem is something that's continues to trouble me. And so when I was reading through, I was just wanting to make sure I wasn't missing something with the spec. So yes is the short answer. That absolutely answers my question.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. So for completeness sake, I'm gonna say this spec was the result of a long discussion in this group with multiple hyperscalers and users, and we tried to add as much generic content as we can in the specification itself. Obviously, there's like a balance between being too vague, like very broad generic to encompass all of the possible cases, and being too specific, which is limiting. So we're kind of at the balance point there. Maybe it's on the side of trying to cover everything. That said, if anyone finds something that's inexpressible with the current format, there's an RFC process. We have gone through this example already in the past. Like there's a discussion or issue in the PR that this went through. And that process is to add stuff that may be missing from the spec. Because one of the important goals here is the structured format is supposed to be very encompassing so that you can express anything in it. And it is meant to be consumed by both automation, like test executors, but also tools for, let's say, visualization of the results. So you can have like translation layers in taking the very complete informatically, anyway, I can't find the word. Complete output in terms of information of a diagnostic run. And you can transform it into something else which is maybe more restricted or maybe proprietary to some particular environment. But the point is you have that possibility because you already have all of the possible detail out of the execution. Yes, I think that was all I wanted to say.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Adrian, quick follow-up question on what Zach was asking. So the APIs provide us a structured way to share the results. If I'm not misunderstanding, right? But the contents of information that is in those results, whether the test is passing or failing, is that also defined in the spec? Like, let's say call a diagnostic command and it has structured output and some fields are empty and some fields have some values in it. Will this spec define that the results are good or not good?
Yeah, so there isn't anything in the spec to say you need to write this kind of diagnosis here. So the contents of the messages belong as a responsibility to the test writer, to the diagnostic writer. The spec is a formatting tool to say stuff. So, for example, there's a diagnosis message in the spec, and it has like an enum with pass, fail, not applicable, whatever. It has a message and symptom and a couple of optional fields. And as the test writer, it's your responsibility to put stuff into those fields, like the message, and say, okay, this run failed for whatever reason, and that's supported by evidence of measurements that came prior to this diagnosis message. But what the API gives you is the call to say, I want to output a diagnosis right now, and this should go into it.
I see. So it doesn't define the pass-fail criteria for.
It does not.
Okay.
No, and it cannot do that because pass-fail criteria depends on the test. If you have a look at the quick start examples or maybe the Python examples, I'm posting them on the chat here. I think things will become a bit clearer.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it for now. I'll take a look and then I'll follow up with more questions next time. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the question. Thanks everyone for joining today. I think we're on time right now. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks' time. And next time we're gonna have demo and API walkthrough for the Rust API from Giovanni. Thank you. Bye.